Hello, welcome to Beyond the Pitch podcast. In this episode, I have Memo Castro with me, a coach at the Academy of IMG in the United States. Looking forward to see you all in the podcast. With me here today, a friend of mine, mentor, uh, great coach. I'm very glad and honored to have Memo Castro as a guest for this episode. Memo, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Mo. It's a great pleasure and honor to be one of your guests. So looking forward to our conversation.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Memo. Appreciate that. And looking at you now, Memo, I remember the days when I had my FCE level 1 online course. And I think I was lucky to meet you at that time and to be my mentor. And still remember those late nights and early mornings sometimes, late afternoons after training sessions and all those conversations we had. And I think you were a great influence to me personally, and also a great person that guided me really to learn about football, to also to know about football and to evolve myself as a coach and also as a person, because I think the example that you set for me in the online mentorship was great. I remember anytime I ask you, you're there to answer. Anytime I needed your help, you were there to help. You never give up. You never showed any signs of tire or fatigue. You're always there and ready and willing to help. But what I also liked about you, that you also wanted to learn from that experience as well, and that's very humble of you. That's great. Memo, first question, traditional question. Who is Memo? Tell us about yourself. Memo the person, Memo the coach.
Well, yeah, just to touch on a little bit what you said previously with how we first interacted. Yeah, you were probably one of the only ones that survived in our subgroup. So, I mean, that's credit to you to continue to want to grow and develop. And now you have this podcast, and it's amazing watching our fellow coaches grow and develop and want to provide more to the football world. So it's really nice. So that's a big compliment to you. Who am I? That's a big question. Yeah, I'm just a football coach, but also I've been living in California for almost my entire life. I started coaching when I was 17 years old. Started as a goal player coach for 3-4 years. That's how I got my foot in the door. And then there was a point where along my coaching journey where I went to play professionally in El Salvador, but then unfortunately things didn't work out, and then I came back. And I realized that when I was in El Salvador, the level of coaching was not at the highest level. So then I wanted to come back and contribute. So then I started doing my coaching licenses. And then when I was coaching high school with my former high school coach, I was supposed to be the goal player coach, and then we had a JV coach who didn't finish his paperwork for the school year. So then I ended up being the head coach of the JV team, and I had no clue how to head coach a team. So then I, like most coaches, YouTube articles on the internet, just trying to gather information. I end up really enjoying it. So I credit that group of players for inspiring me to be a head coach and continue my coaching journey. That's really what sparked it at the age of like 21. And then now I have my US A license and I have my UEFA B license, and I've been on this FCE journey with you as well. Now I'm fortunate enough to be here in Florida, beautiful Bradenton, Florida. I coach at IMG Academy, which is a big honor, big name, big school, big program, and we're still looking to develop top players here as well. The environment we work in is top. We get a full pitch to train on, and the players are here to be the best players they can be, to get Division 1 scholarships, and to help eventually go on and play professionally. So it's a nice environment to be in. You got all the tools. But yeah, me as a person, um, very different from being on the football pitch. I think if you know me on the football pitch, I'm very serious. I'm very to the point and direct. And then off the pitch, very funny guy, very outgoing, and yeah, just relaxed. But on the pitch is very business orientated. So, but I've loved the journey so far. A lot of years of coaching.
Awesome, awesome. That's great. So, Memo, can you tell us a little bit about the IMG Academy? Because the academy has a great reputation, even here in Canada. I heard about it. Nice things about the academy. Like, what age group are you coaching? What gender are you coaching as well? Like, anything that you want to share with our audience about the IMG Academy? Maybe some of our audience they don't know that much about the environment yet.
Of course. Well, IMG Academy is located in Bradenton, Florida. We're right by the beach. So we have amazing weather. We have, if you're a footballer, we have 16 available pitches, all natural grass, Bermuda, beautiful surface, always flat, always perfect. We have strength and conditioning coaches. We have nutrition coaches. We have the brain coaches. Um, the kids that are onboarding are that board there. They live there. They go to school there. They're basically 24/7. It's sports and school. Um, but yeah, no, the environment is top. Like the normal school day for the player is, because I'm on the girls side, so I'm with the girls program. I coach the under 16s and I coach the under 14 girls in the girls academy level. Um, but a typical school day for the player looks like they go to school in the morning from 8 to 11:30. Then they go to lunch. Then at 12:50 they report to me, and we go to the film room, and then we watch film. Then we go to the pitch 1:30 to 3. They train, and then afterwards, depending on the day, they have strength and conditioning right after. So that's on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They have strength and conditioning right after, and also nutrition or leadership classes right after. And then our brain state coach comes to the pitch as well on Wednesdays to check the brain state of the players, see how they're behaving, whether their behavior is slightly off. So I'm always meeting with her every week, try and design something to strengthen the team building and the bonds between players and the team. So we work with her very closely. But no, it's as close to professional without being professional. So
Excellent, excellent. No, I've seen some because we're lucky enough that myself and you we are doing the same online course now with the FCE, and we are so lucky to have you as one of the case studies at that course. And I think what you have shared through that case study process, yeah, it looks like there is a good environment definitely for work. And I'm gonna be honest with you, and I'm not throwing flour on you here. They are very lucky to have you as a coach because I know you personally, and no, they are very lucky to have you. So, Memo, we're just going to shift in a little bit here into our conversation as well, and continue talking about football. We're already talking about football. We're going to dig in a bit into more details. And 3 years ago, like 2 years and a half or three, I was in Amsterdam on a in-person course with my mentor, your mentor, Raymond Verheyen, which for me is the best mentor that I have interact with in this planet. And I remember the first day at the course, Raymond threw the questions on all the coaches in the room. What is football? And I think at that time, the penny dropped for me because we were like almost 50 coach in that room. When he asked the questions, you can see the silence in the eyes of the coaches in the room, and looking at the eyes of the coaches, you can see that maybe if you ask each of us, he could probably got like multiple definitions of football. So if I want to direct the question to you, Memo, what is football?
Yeah, like you said, if football, it's really interesting when everyone plays the same game and everyone defines it in a different way. You maybe some guys say, "Oh, it's about passion," or "Football is about winning," or "Football is about having fun." But there's no universal definition of football, especially between all the coaches that coach the same game. So, now for the universal definition of football is a game of two teams of 11v11, and the winning team scores more goals than the opposing team. So that's the universal definition of football.
Awesome. And if you want to also go into more details, because every coach is familiar with those terms of such uh, technique, tactic, and fitness. And I think most of the coaches do know that this component are not separate, but they all influence each other within the practice. But is there any hierarchy for these components if we are talking about the football, or talking about technique or tactic or fitness? Can you walk us, Memo, through the hierarchy of those components? What comes first and why? What comes after
Yeah,
and why?
yeah, of course. No, I mean, again, sticking to what football is, what the football context is. And again, it's a game of two teams of 11v11. And then within the context of football, obviously you have goals on both ends of the pitch. One team tries to score on the other end, and then one team tries to defend their own goal. And obviously, based on the rules of the game, the laws of the game, like the players have to perform actions within this football context. So I think that before we begin to create a hierarchy or discuss the hierarchy of communicating, deciding, and executing actions within the action, we have to first define what is a football action. So I think we've already defined what football is, and now we have to define what an action is, because again, most coaches don't know the difference between action and movement. So, for example, um, this if I move my arm up and down, this is just moving my arm. But then if I interact with this pen, now this movement becomes an action. It becomes lifting. I am lifting the pen. So an action is just an interaction with the environment. So then if you put that together with football, so football action is just an interaction with the football context. So when people say movement, it creates all this kind of confusion when you speak about football. So like for example, there's movements within a football action, but the movement is not the action itself. So like running is an integral part of becoming a passing option or a progress option, or kicking is an integral part of passing. So to understand what an action and a movement is, I think it's very fundamental. And then we can now start to break down the hierarchy or the components of what makes up a football action. So I think those two things that needs to be discussed first and understood first: action versus movement. So again, an action or football action is an interaction with the football context. And if one of the components, for example, if the goals are removed and you're just playing maybe rondo for an example, it's not a football action anymore. You're just kicking a ball or you're just playing with the ball. Versus if you have the two goals at the end with the laws of the game, and now you have directional, now you are passing, now you are becoming progress option, uh, now you are for example, now you are dribbling, or now you're pressing. So all these actions now have a meaning to it, versus if you take components out of the game, now it's not the game anymore. They're not performing actions anymore.
So all all the characteristic of the game are being respected in that frame. Is that right?
Precisely. Yeah. Everything needs to be there for it to be a football action.
Absolutely. And do you
Mhm.
think also, Memo, the confusion or maybe the lack of awareness and knowledge uh, from the coaches to uh, what a football action means, what movement means, for example. That also that confusion can transfer to the training sessions, to the design, because a lot of time I heard, well, we are doing a passing exercise today, and well, when you look at that, the
Yep.
activity, it's basically a basic action, kicking the ball. There is no passing within it because the passing, it's or kicking, it's an integral part of the passing action. So do you
Yep.
think also that confusion and maybe sometimes we are not aware of what is this, what is that, can also transfer to our design, or our sessions, and our also explaining things to our players.
Yeah, because coaches try to design activities or exercises, like you said. However, you shouldn't be designing an activity or an exercise as an objective within itself. You should be trying to design training situations or game situations. If your training is 11v11, then you're designing game situations, trying to provoke certain interactions between players. Or if you have to simplify 11v11, then you have to design training situations because now you're modifying the game in a certain way and you're training specific things. So I think that's a good way to put it, because then, like you said, coaches try to design passing exercises or passing patterns, but now you have to look at, okay, is it really passing or are you just kicking the ball? Because now there is no goals, there are no opposing players to pass around to provoke certain actions, certain certain position, moment, direction, and speed of the pass. So yeah, I mean, when you design a training situation, you have to look at, okay, what is the game and what within the game am I trying to provoke?
Excellent. So, can you? I think you elaborated well. What is a football action? I think it's very clear now, but maybe some of our audience they are not aware of these references yet. And I think this is a good opportunity to explain this the maximum you could. Can you also define to us what a basic action mean and what a movement mean in trainings? Like bring those pictures to the training sessions, and this is uh, football action training or football interaction training. This is a basic action training, and this is a movement training.
Yeah, of course. No, like again, taking the football action as a starting point, as you mentioned earlier. So within the football action, you have communicating, deciding, executing decisions. And like you said, there is a hierarchy. So communicating is obviously of a higher order, because without the communicating part of the football action, you need to be able to exchange information not only with your teammates but also with the opponent, because what the opponent does will provoke uh, your decision or will influence how you decide to help the team, help your own team. And also, your teammates will also influence your decision on how you will help the team and how you guys are going to work together. So, communicating is of the highest order, the exchange of information between players. Um, so then, once the player has collected the information they needed, and it's within this less of a second, it's a split second of interaction. Then they decide what they're going to do, so their contribution to the team, and then they're going to decide how they're going to do it. And this is where you get the space time characteristics, position, moment, direction, and speed. So then the player has to choose the best possible position, moment, direction, speed to accomplish their contribution to the team, which the contribution we call individual intention. So they must accomplish their individual intention with the best possible position, moment, direction, and speed. And then the final part of the football action is the only thing that we see on the pitch is executing their decisions. So they have to execute the position, moment, direction, speed that they chosen. But it doesn't always mean that what they execute is what they wanted to do. So all we see is what there is, and sometimes we fall guilty of oh, the player made a bad pass, so their decision making is poor or their technique is poor. But you have to look beyond that, and because you have to find out what the player really wanted to do, because maybe they had the right decision, but they just executed it poorly, or maybe they didn't communicate in the best possible way. So then, based on the information they collected, they didn't get enough or the best possible information. Then the decision they made was not the best possible decision. But then a lot of the times we blame the technique when there's a bigger problem, and the technique is just a symptom of a bigger problem. Um, but yeah, with that being said, with this process, with this hierarchy and this definition of a football action, now we can now categorize what is a football action, which we already defined. A basic action is basically an interaction that's not with the football context. So, like we said, kicking the ball is a basic action because you are interacting with the environment, and so the environment being the ball. So then you are not playing football, but now maybe you're just kicking the ball against the wall. So kicking is a basic action, or maybe you're doing a passing pattern, quote unquote passing pattern, but it's really a kicking pattern because there's no opponents. So you're just kicking the ball to your teammates within whatever pattern the coach chose to do. And then, but even with these basic actions, you can also break them down into movements, which is maybe bending the knee, uh, uh, flexing the ankle, um, rotating the hip. So all these are movements. And then, but ultimately, the football action is of the highest order. And if a coach identifies a problem within the football action, you want to solve it first at the level of football within the football context. And then if the coach cannot solve it within the football context, then maybe he goes to the basic action. So again, you have to have a logical reason why you don't train in the football context. And then with your logical reasoning as a coach, then you say, okay, maybe we have to do basic actions to hopefully improve the action because there's no guarantee. And then if you cannot solve it there, maybe the player has a movement deficiency, maybe with the hip, maybe they don't tighten their core, so then their back doesn't, so they can't contract their core, so their back is very loose, or the hips. So then they do something with core stability, which hopefully contributes to the basic action, which then hopefully helps the football action. But again, you have to have a good logical process and very good football lenses to view these football problems through, or else you'll end up fighting symptoms and rather than solving the problem at the end of the day.
So I think there is also if there is a hierarchy for all those components for the in the game, like the communication, decision making, and executing the decisions. There is also a hierarchy on how a coach should fix the problem within the team or for individuals. So you start from football as a starting point, if I'm right, Memo. And then
Yes,
if
that's
the
correct.
problem is not at the football level, then you go down and you start to to narrow down to the basic action, then to the movement if that's the issue. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, the football problem is always by definition the problem. But then if you cannot solve it for A or B reason, maybe, like I said, maybe the player has a very, uh, he has trouble maybe tightening his core.
Hmm.
So then if you cannot solve it in the like for example, if the player is pressing and they're pressing, but then they're leaning too far forward, so then they're having trouble decelerating. So they don't decelerate well because now their core falls over. So then maybe you take it back to basic action. So you take the player momentarily out of the football context. So then you train sprinting, stopping. But then if sprinting, stopping, you still cannot help the player keep their core slightly higher, then you go into movement to where you help with the core stability with whatever exercises you think the player needs. So then you have to go through this process. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. And just coming back here to those same three components or references that you mentioned, Memo, the communication, decision making, and also executing those decisions. So Can you walk us through like at what age you're gonna, for example, overload uh, executing of decision and training, which is the technical training, and what age again you're gonna overload the decision making in training, which is almost the gaming side training, and at what age again you're gonna overload the communication, or which traditionally we call it the tactical training, and also when the fitness it's gonna come to this process as well in training. Like let's say we have an academy structure, we have players or team that let's say uh, under seven, for example. What type of training we're gonna do with the under seven, under nine, under 10? What uh, training overload we're gonna have with under 11, under 13, and what trainings overload we're gonna have with under 15 or under 17, etc.
Yeah, it's a really good question because academies need to have a very um, unified way of viewing player development, and all the coaches within the age group need to understand where the players are in terms of the development of their brain, so the prefrontal cortex of the player, because when the player is younger, the prefrontal cortex of the player may not be fully developed, so then it's very hard for them to grasp concepts of teammates, that they're there to help you. So then you see, like, if you see under sevens or under six, they're like bumblebees. They like all run together for the ball because the ball's a toy at the end. Like for a young child, the ball's a toy and everyone wants the toy. So then you get coaches yelling from the sideline to spread out, but it's not in their nature because they all want the toy. But when the player is older, the prefrontal cortex is more developed, their logical reasoning is more developed. Then they understand, like, hey, I'm working together with my teammates. They're the opponents. We have to perform in a way where we have to outplay this opponent so we can accomplish the objective of the game, which is to win and score more goals than the opposing team. So then at team level, they understand communicating becomes more complex. So then at the older age group, then you can do more things tactically with those age groups because again, their brain has been more developed, or they are more developed at that stage of their life. But yeah, no, for the younger age groups, like 6 to 10, 6 to 12, like that is the key stage for developing their executing decisions. So then this is where you're developing their football technique, is how we call it. The football technique, which is how you execute your decisions or how you execute your football action. But yes, the younger age groups, they should be focused on mastering the ball and being able to execute with good technique, but also just not technique in isolation, but technique within the context of the game. So then that's where we have this disconnect in the football world, where because they're younger, they think they have to isolate the technique, versus maybe you have to design a training situation where the player has a lot of space and time. They're still opposing players and there's still a goal. So then they can orientate themselves towards that goal. So then maybe you start the opponent further away from the player with the ball so they have space and time to practice their executing. They have to, maybe they play against less opponents, maybe you put them in a bigger space. But in the younger age groups, this is where you overload executing. Um,
So,
also,
sorry,
oh,
Memo here to
yeah,
cut you. So, by
sorry.
manipulating the training for the age group, for the younger ones, like for example, not training technique in isolation, but also including, for example, direct opponent, but with more
Yep.
space and time. Is that, are you now underloading the decision making and the communication, or an overloading technique, or what are you
Yeah, yeah.
manipulating within that structure? If you can really uh, explain that to us, of course.
Yeah, yep. Because 11v11 is ultimately very complex. So then you have to simplify 11v11, especially for the younger players, where maybe they struggle with receiving the ball. So then what makes football difficult is space and time,
Yes.
because as you get higher in the levels, as you get older, space and time becomes less. So then we don't want to just throw the players in the deep end. We want the younger players to be able to master certain football techniques, because it is executing decisions, not executing. It's not like gymnastics where you do a movement, a body movement, or a basic action for the judges to give you a score, because moving your body is an objective in gymnastics. Where in football, the objective is to get the ball from A to B, and it doesn't matter how you get the ball from A to B, but ultimately B is scoring the goal, getting to the opposing goal and scoring the goal. But it is executing decisions. So if you take away decisions and then you're just executing, then you're just kicking a ball. But so then that's why you can manipulate the training situation with maybe the opponent starting further away from the player, or you put the players in more space, so now the opponent has to be more spread out, so that gives more space and time for the player. And then gradually, as the players start to perform better football actions, they start to execute their football actions better, then you gradually reduce the space, and then you start to overload them with less space and time. But also in the age groups, in the younger age group, there's still, it doesn't mean there's no communicating, there doesn't mean there's no deciding happening, but the difference is in the younger age group that communicating needs to be consistent. The deciding has to be consistent. They cannot be variables. They cannot be manipulated. It cannot be changed.
So
Because then the
stability,
moment, yes,
stability
there
at
needs
the
to be
communication
stability.
level.
Yes, the environment needs to be stable for the player so they can solely focus on the executing of their decisions. So, for example, we use team intentions to give all the players the tactical glasses to view the game. Because it's very hard to get 11 brains to view the game in the same way. So, for example, if the team intention is exploiting space behind the back line of the opposing team, all the players have to have those tactical glasses to say, okay, we are going to try to exploit space behind the back line of the opposing team. And then we have to work together to then accomplish this team intention. So, through those glasses, the environment, at team level communicating is stabilized. And then now with the decisions, maybe let's take an example of 4 versus 2, for example, at the younger age group. 4 versus 2. If you put these players, for example, in a diamond and you put the two defenders, the player with the ball wants to progress the ball as close to the opposing goal as possible and only as far away as necessary. So obviously, the player at the top of the diamond is the best option because they're closer to the goal. So then this is what we're going. So now the decision is a given. The decision is a given. The players on the sides of the diamonds have to attract their direct opponent like a magnet away from this progress line between the player with the ball and the best progress option. So this is the executing that we want to influence throughout the training session, and they will get 100 repetitions of this, of executing this within the training design. And if this is too difficult, then maybe you start with one defender. But the decision is also a given. That is the best progress option. That is what you look for. And then everything else is self explanatory, where now all you have to do is execute this decision for the training session or for the training situation that you designed. So, like you said, the environment is stable for the player.
Okay. Oh, brilliant. This is brilliant. And really it's a surgical explanation for how a training environment for that age group should looks like because
Yeah.
I think what you mentioned, Memo, the execution, it's not an objective in itself, but it is still execution of a decision. The only difference, the decision is not overloaded; it's given. The
Yep.
communication is not overloaded; it's a given or it's stable, and that's definitely very helpful. And I'm sure the audience coaches, when they listen to this, they will definitely reflect on all these references that you have provided here, Memo. So after this age group, now we're talking about the overload of decision making within trainings. What age does
Yep.
it start? What we mean by training the decision making, and how we're gonna fix that, and what age group
Mhm.
exactly we're gonna start to fix those.
Yeah. Where I mean, after you've built this foundation of football technique, then now hopefully the players now it doesn't mean you're not going to train it later, but hopefully now the player has a nice foundation to then progress to now overloading their deciding on the pitch. So this is around 13 to 15 when players actually start to play 11v11. So these players now, their prefrontal cortex is now developed. They understand the concept of team and the role of the opposing team and what your team has to do to accomplish the objective of the game. So now with this age group, now deciding becomes the overload because still the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed to where now you can manipulate the team intention or manipulate the opposing team in a tactical way or do certain player rotations because then now you start to overload the communicating of the players because they still don't have uh the game insight to understand the the or the football situation that they're in. You have to keep, like we said with the younger ones, you have to keep communicating stable still for this age group so then they can work on improving their game insight and understanding, okay, when what what situation is being provoked, so what situation action pattern is going to be provoked. So maybe you have the number 9 as the best progress option and the right center back with the ball, and the number 9 is the best progress option. If the coach starts to manipulate maybe the midfielder rotating with the 9, maybe this is too much. So now you're overloading communicating. So now the player not only has to communicate with the best progress option, but now he has to also communicate with the second player in rotation. So this becomes a little bit too much. So now this uh, this 13-year-old is being overloaded at the level of communicating versus just helping the player understand game insight principles of, okay, progressing the ball as direct as possible and only as indirect as necessary. So again, the communicating has to be a given at
So
that age group.
even at this age group, you still have to simplify the team intention. Is that right?
Yeah, you just have to keep the team intention uh stable, the same. Basically, keep it the same. Yeah,
And
because yeah, if you start to switch the team intention too much, then you start to create confusion between the players. Oh, I thought we were exploiting space behind the middle line, or I thought we were going to exploit space behind the front line.
what's now we've seen the pros. What's the cons of doing this the opposite at this age group? Because I think maybe doing the opposite now when as coaches we start to tell player what to do. Is that right? I think we are hindering them now from developing their game insight
Mm-hmm.
and trying to maybe to robot the players instead of like really at this age group still uh, let them develop those fundamentals that they need.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we're trying to create the best possible or develop the best possible players. Um, but again, if we take the professionals and we see what the professionals do, these players, their game insight is already developed. They already have the certain tools that they can reference within the game situation. So then the coach can now play with the communicating, because maybe sometimes you build up in a certain way to create a trap for the opposing team. So then you can exploit different spaces based on the weaknesses of the opposing team that you've analyzed. But this is with players with already developed game insight. These 13, 14, 15 year olds don't have this developed game insight yet. You have to give players the time to develop these tools so they can guide themselves on the pitch. So they can decide for themselves on the pitch. So they can look for the right things and they can try to execute the right things or in the best possible way. But if you're always roboting the players or like telling them to make certain rotations, then you take the game away from the player and they're just performing your own circus trick as a coach. So then when the player gets to uh, 18 years old, 19 years old, and maybe they get to play professional football, or maybe they don't, because their game insight is underdeveloped because they don't know how to make those decisions themselves, because they can't recognize those situation active action patterns themselves. So then they struggle, and then those players end up being weeded out, and only top players that can solve things on the pitch based on their very developed game insight will make it to the top.
And that
That's the downfall.
it is explain uh, definitely that's why sometimes players when they grow up and they go to other environment they can't survive because I think they are maybe missing these fundamentals within their profiles when they were at this age group. 'Cause, nowadays, sometimes we see uh, we watch teams, we watch Man City, we watch Liverpool, we watch all these players, seeing Guardiola, how he's building up from the back, how he's doing all those rotations. But sometimes as coaches, we tend to forget that we cannot mimic that because those players, their game insight is higher. They have the highest game insight in the game. So if Guardiola is asking this player to play in a certain way, he's not negatively influencing them. No, he can manipulate them to do that. But our players, their game insight is not at that level yet. So if we are asking them to perform these tasks on the field, we are negatively influencing them and also taking the opportunity away from them to develop their game insight. So I think this is brilliant, Memo. Yeah, thanks for mentioning this because this
Yeah,
is very
yeah,
important to know as coaches.
yeah. And it's like you said, like you're not at that level with at the highest level professional football. When the coach does certain things, you're not negatively affecting the game insight because it's already developed. You're just now trying to accomplish the objective of the game and take advantage of maybe a weakness of the opponent. But even then, the player has a game insight to adapt within the situation. And if the players aren't giving the tool or given the tools, the game, the principles to help guide their thinking within the game, if they're not given those tools, they're not going to be able to adapt. They're only going to know one certain way. It's like when clubs have a certain playing style, and every team plays a certain playing style, so they only know that one way of playing. But then if they get sold and they go to a different club with a different playing style, they can't adapt. So then people wonder like, oh, he was so good there, but now he went over there, he's not good anymore. No, it's not that he's not good anymore; it's that he wasn't able to adapt because he was only taught one way of playing and not given game insight principles, team intentions to guide his thinking, to football technique principles to guide his way of executing decisions. It's been very one way only, and then players struggle to adapt in a different environment.
Brilliant, brilliant. So just coming back here to the same reference that definitely took us to a different conversation, but it was definitely healthy to talk about as well. So, coaching, the decision making, or the game insight training, and we all agreed that we underload the communication. Okay, so we don't affect that. So what about the technique training? Is still like underloaded, still overloaded, or like how the coach should structure the training sessions at that age group when you are coaching the decision making? Is the technique, which is it's not going to be a technique in isolation, of course, it's going to be a technique to execute those decisions. So where the technique falls at this age group, because this is the question a lot of coaches sometimes ask. Well, uh, will I still overload the execution with this 13 12 13 14 age players?
Yeah. No, I mean, you're always practicing executing decisions. Like you said, it's just an underload. So every training situation that you provoke, there's always communicating, there's always deciding, and there's always executing decisions. And you as a coach have to either recognize that, oh, okay, maybe because you could choose to overload deciding, but maybe there's a problem at the level of communicating. So then you have to solve that problem first and say, hey, okay, what are we trying to accomplish here? Oh, exploding space behind the back line. Okay, so then how do you contribute to exploding space behind the back line? So then once you fix that problem, even within your deciding session, because it's again, if there's miscommunicating, then you're not going to be able to overload deciding. So the communicating needs to be fixed first, and then you can focus on the deciding. And once you fix that, then you can go deeper into the deciding. But even then, within the trading situation, you still have executing. So maybe if you recognize that, hey, maybe he's uh, kicking the ball in a certain way with his foot, that's stopping him from preventing him from accomplishing his individual intention, then maybe you address the player on the side when maybe water break or when there's a natural stoppage. Then you give them a tool in terms of executing the pass in a certain way. Um, but then we can also talk about, so that's even within the training situation there. You don't only have to focus on the deciding, but if there's a problem that you recognize as a coach that's preventing the team from accomplishing the team intention, it needs to be addressed. You can't just put it on the side and hopefully that it gets better. You have to address the player if the technique is not there, because maybe he's choosing the right decision, but he's not executing it well. Then you can address it within the session. But then now when to overload executing for that age group. Now we talk about periodization a little bit. So earlier in the week, when players are maybe you have a match on Saturday, for example. Ideally, you do recovery the next day and then you're off the following day because muscles are often sore the second day after the game. So then you want to give them the day off, but you also don't want to miss if there's an injury or a little knock on the player. You don't want to wait 24 hours for treatments. Don't want to wait that long. So then that's why you do the recovery the day after, so players can get treatment, but also um, get lactic acid out of the muscles and stay active recovery, and then you give them the day off. But then the following day, the third day after the game, when players have to restart their engine, for example, that would be a good day to overload executing, because now again the brain is still recovering from the match on Saturday. So then it's now players, now you can overload executing in terms of, okay, the training situation is stable, like we talked about with the younger players. Okay, communicating is stable, deciding is a given, and all you have to do is work on executing that day. So it's not a lot on the brain of the player, and it's also not a lot on the muscular load of the player. You're just working on executing that first day back in training.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I think we're coming now to that uh, next component, which is significantly very important because that's the first in the hierarchy of football, which is the communication or the tactical training. So, at what age should the coaches now start coaching those tactical
Yeah.
intentions, tactical principles in training sessions, and how they're gonna do that? Not do how as an objective in itself, but just how they're gonna approach it because at the same time, you don't want to be doing something that maybe not appropriate for the age groups of the players, even let's say 15, 16, 17, but maybe you're just going to introduce them to the team intention, for example. Uh, uh, you mentioned earlier, like the entire team looking with the same glasses. Now they're going to start to manipulate maybe those team intentions. Maybe if the spacing behind the back line is not available, is not possible, then what's the alternative, or what's the next methodological step or intermediate step within that? So how we can approach that? If it's that step again is not possible, how we can even simplify uh, our intention, or how each individual contribute to that. So now you're gonna try to bring 11 players on the field, but let's say you have under 15, under 16, under 17 team. How you're gonna start to introduce that training?
Yeah, absolutely. No, the once the players are 16 and older, I mean, now their prefrontal cortex is more mature. So then these players can now start to be overloaded in terms of at the level of communicating. So now you can manipulate the intention of the players. So maybe you give them based on their abilities and inabilities. Maybe instead of maybe you have a number seven, a number seven who is good at asking for the ball behind the middle line, and you have a very good fullback that can maintain their actions and becoming a progress option behind the back line. So then these little interactions, player rotations, start to overload because now it's not seven, because seven is closer to the opposing goal naturally based on playing formation in 1-4-3-3, for example. The seven is closer to the opposing goal than number two. But if seven has a better ability to ask for the ball behind the middle line, and number two has a good ability to ask for the ball behind the back line, then this interaction can be trained and overloaded based on the player's abilities and inabilities within the boundaries of the team intention. But that's just an example for the age group. But also, you can manipulate the opponents to force the team to adapt. So, for example, in maybe at the start of the preseason, you start the opposing team at that 10 meters behind the halfway line. So then you increase the gap behind the back line and the opposing goal. So then you practice exploiting space behind the back line. But then as the team adapts, then you drop the opposing team 20 meters behind the halfway line, or even 30 meters behind the halfway line. So now now your team has to switch to which team intention is best, because now with the reduced space behind the back line, you have to choose a different team intention to get closer to the opposing goal. So now you're manipulating the opponents and now also manipulating the team intention. So now you're going to exploit space behind the middle line more often, or you're going to exploit space behind the front line more often. And then as the ages get older and you're starting to play for competition and preparing players maybe for the first team, now you have to help them. Now that their game insight is developed, you can now start to help them set traps or learn how to set traps for the opposing team, because maybe your goal player cannot play the ball accurately behind the back line 9 out of 10 times. So maybe you play through the center back when the opposing team is pressing high, and then maybe you pull the nine out of position and you teach them to find the free center back, and then we can play through the free center back behind the back line versus the goal player trying to play the ball immediately to the best progress option behind the back line. But like at this age group now, you can start to manipulate the team intention depending on where the players are. So again, not an objective within itself, because if the players still struggle with making the best possible decision, you cannot jump in overload communicating yet. Kind of like how in my training environment where the players still struggle with game insights or game insights, so then I have to maybe not manipulate the environment so much. Uh, so yeah, I mean, based on where the players are in their development, now you can start to overload them gradually. But usually 16 and up, the prefrontal cortex is more developed, they're more mature, and now you can start to overload them in terms of, okay, the opponent, the amount of space you give them behind the back line, or even the different playing formations, because different playing formations um, leave certain spaces naturally when different formations interact. So then you could change the playing formation of the opposing team in training. to then provoke different team intentions to interact more often, depending what you want to get as a coach within the training situation.
Yeah,
So I
that's
mean, this
that's
yeah,
exciting.
the older age groups.
It's
Yeah,
very
no, that
exciting because I think listening to you, Memo, now, I think what he also mentioned that even overloading the tactical training, you don't take it as an objective in itself. You still have to adapt. Mentioned that if exploiting the spacing behind the opposing team back line, it's really difficult for your players. Then maybe you're gonna manipulate that by having the opposing team stepping up higher, and then there is space available. Then you can go and exploit, and then you gradually keep manipulating that based on how the players is adapting, and that's very important. I think very important way to do it because it's not too much too soon, I guess, in here.
yep, and that's how you develop a playing style. But also within the playing style, the players develop almost their own playing style based on their own abilities and inabilities, and you're just there to guide the process because they will figure out how to exploit space behind the back line in their own way, in the best way they can do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so within those tactical trainings, if you realize that the main problem is the decision making, so how are you gonna address that? For example, in trainings, are you gonna simplify the 11v11 game, for example, to fix the decision making issues, or is there any different approach that a coach can take to fix that? Because a lot of times when we start 11v11, we realize that the issue is in the decision, or it could be also in the
Yeah,
execution as well. Like we have
yeah,
sometimes maybe your center back cannot clip a ball in behind the opposing team backline. There is space there, there is options there, but there is good progress options there, but just the center back cannot clip a ball over there. So there's also some situation that we find, especially in the environment where I'm coaching. We have this issue on a daily basis that we face this situation, problem at the execution, problem sometimes on the decision making. So
yeah. No, so I'm in. So you described in maybe an executing problem or maybe an inability of the player. So then maybe you have to, as a coach, adapt the player's individual intention to the team intention. So maybe you're not going to exploit space immediately through the center back, exploit space behind the back line immediately through the center back. But then maybe his individual intention is to progress the ball. For example, maybe to number 7, who's good at, like I mentioned, maybe he or she is good at asking for the ball behind the middle line. So maybe their job is to progress the ball behind the middle line because that's what they're able to do. And then number 7 can now progress the ball behind the back line. But then you can overload this by simplifying, like you said, the game of 11v11 now at the level of at the player level. So maybe you want more repetition for maybe the right center back. So then you don't need the left-sided players on the pitch because if you have the left-sided players on the pitch, now it's like 50-50. Maybe maybe the right center back will get the ball, maybe the right center back won't get the ball. So then to ensure that the right center back is going to get the ball for a lot of the times in the training situation, you can cut out the left-sided players and now you can focus more towards the right-sided players. So again, you're simplifying the game at player level. So maybe you take away the left fullback and the left winger, and also the right fullback and the right winger for the opposing team. And then you can even gradually move over more. So then maybe you don't need the left center back, and the right center back will always have the ball. So at gradually going this way, depending how many repetitions you want the right center back to have.
and can you also, because this is a very important point, Memo, and also for our audience, coaches as well, all of us to be aware of it. The reasons why you simplify the 11v11 game, because we all need to know that, because sometimes we simplify the game as an objective in itself. The objective is the simplification, but what are the 2 to 3 reasons that you want to simplify an 11v11 game? Let's say for 9v9, 7v7, 8v8, even 5v5.
Yeah. No, I mean, the coach has to have first analyze his own process within the how he's developed the team, but then also based on his analysis of the match on the weekend, maybe identifies a problem at team level, and maybe a certain interaction between team intentions is not uh, strong enough, or not very good, or not developed as much as he thinks it should be. So maybe he simplifies the game at team level, because you can simplify the game at team level, or you could simplify the game at player level, or a combination. So maybe from the back line to behind, exploiting space behind the front line. So the back line players cannot progress the ball maybe to the front line players when the front line play when the middle. So for example, so we are playing from a goal kick, and the opposing team was pressing with the front three. So, and then there's space behind the front line of the opposing team, but our back line was not able to find the solution. So then at team level, the coach has to simplify the game to where now you get more repetitions of exploiting space behind the front line. So then the coach will take out the opposing back line, and the coach will also take out our own front line. So then you get the interaction more between the back line and the middle line to exploit space behind the front line. So at team level, the coach needs to find a solution, because maybe this interaction was the key to helping the team become more successful. Also, there could be, if he identifies a deciding problem within the team. So now he wants to focus more, maybe the right center back, for example, was not recognizing number 7 as a progress option behind the middle line. So now you reduce the game at not only at team level, but also at player level. So then you take out the left-sided players on the pitch and use the necessary players. So you get that constant interaction. So then you develop that situation action pattern in the brain of the right center back. And then if there's an executing problem, then the coach can also reduce or simplify the game at 11, from 11v11 to maybe 4v4, 5v5. So then the right center back has as much space and time as possible with no direct opponent, and all he has to do is work on the executing of decisions within that training session. But yeah, I mean, it's based on what the coach analyzes, and again, he has to have very good football glasses, so the references have to be very strong in his brain to filter all the problems and figure out what the cause is and not a symptom of the football problem. That way he can design the best possible training situations for his players.
Brilliant, and I think that's when the art of coach actions come to the place, and maybe we will talk about that in the next podcast because not too much too soon for sure, because I think it's very important as well, because there is a lot of time as coaches when we are fixing, spend a lot of time and energy fixing something which is just a symptom, but we forgot about the real problem at any age group. Like I say, at technical training, decision making training, communication training, a lot of time we spend it sometimes fixing uh, the effect. I forgot about the cause. What caused that to happen?
Yeah.
And the next component here, Memo, I want to ask you about is the F, the fitness, which is also a big conversation, I think, going around about it. So, what is fitness training? Do we need fitness to play football, or do we need to be fit to play football? When we integrate the fitness training, and how? Maybe just to give us not the how as an objective in itself, because maybe your house is different than my house, because maybe I have different factors in my environment, or other coach that listen to us have different factors in his or her environment. So, can you elaborate a little bit on uh, the fitness training and how it's integrated in the game, at what age and when, and anything that you wanna uh, incite our audience?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, football fitness is fitness within the football context. Sometimes coaches take fitness as an objective within itself, so then they run around the pitch or they run sprints after the training session for whatever reason. But again, you want to be able to have your team maintain the play style for as long as possible for as long as possible, and these players have to perform their actions as frequently as possible for as long as possible, or as long as necessary. So, and again, football actions are communicating, deciding, and executing. So this reference has to be performed again as frequently as possible for as long as necessary within the game. So you have to maintain this. So this is football fitness: communicating, deciding, and executing for as frequently as possible and for as long as necessary. So it's not football. It's not fitness outside of football. So these are not two separate things. It is fitness within football, within the football context. And this is what coaches need to really critically evaluate, because then, yes, you can run for a certain period of time, but it's not the same as maintaining communicating with teammates. It's not maintaining the deciding for the player, thinking task. It is not executing for the entire 90 minutes, executing decisions for the entire 90 minutes. So it's like, what are you trying to condition? What are you trying to help the players maintain? Because every football training session, you are conditioning the brains of the players, and then how you how you prescribe the work to rest ratios for the team to gradually increase their ability to maintain this, the communicating, deciding, and executing decisions, maintain this, and to do it for more frequently. Again, it's the art of coaching, because you know your players. So there's, again, maybe you start maybe with 2 minutes, and then the next week you do 2.5 minutes of a certain training situation. So gradually you're expanding their ability, their football fitness, to do this for more frequently and for as long as possible. Eventually you can play 90 minutes at the highest tempo, because you want to play at the highest tempo.
That's
And
when the art
yeah,
of periodization come to the plan, because the periodization should be a tool to help your players improve as footballers, not an objective in itself as well.
yeah. And football periodization is not just football fitness. Football periodization is the periodization of football.
Yeah.
So communicating, deciding, executing the team intentions, the game insight principles, yeah, uh, structuring the training sessions in a certain way in the lead up to a game, uh, throughout the whole season. When do you choose to play larger games versus smaller games? And again, all these things are an integral part of not only the football fitness, but then the overall football periodization, and which it should be start to be introduced after the growth spurt of the player. So once the player has finished their growth spurt, then you can start to overload these players in terms of football fitness and in stretching their football fitness boundaries. Before the growth spurt, it is risky, because yeah, I mean, the muscles start to grow, also the bones and the tendons. So then there's a lot of pressure on the ligaments as well, as the bones are growing and the muscles are growing. So then if you overload them too much, then you get the unfortunate ACL injuries that could be avoided, because of, if the coach can periodize the week very well, or reduce the load of certain players based on how much they've grown during the month. So all these things are very important. But after the growth spurt is usually when you start to overload the players in terms of football fitness.
Yeah, and that's That's very important as coaches to be aware of, because I think knowing all these references, it's not just for you to run a good fitness training session, but as well it's good for the safety of our players as well, because I think there is many injuries that happens that unfortunately we could have been avoided if uh, us coaches are aware maybe of these references, because like what you mentioned, the fitness training is important. Maybe it should be after the growth spurt. Before that, there is a risk
Yep.
players. So
Yeah. But before you should be helping the players be better deciders, better executing of decisions. You should be helping them in those areas, and that way they can make the best decision. So then they should be able to always think action, always maintain think action, and always focusing on the task and improving the task and making sure they can perform their actions in the best possible way. And then once they hit the growth spurt, then you can start to overload them in terms of doing it for more frequently and for as long as possible. But first, you want to improve their football ability, which is their ability to do CDE, communicating, deciding, executing. You should improve their football ability to make sure their 100% is at the highest level possible. And then football fitness is just trying to maintain that 100% for as frequently as possible and for as long as possible. So you have to
that's
improve their 100% first. That's the most important, or else because you don't want players to play at 70% of their 100% for as frequently as possible. You want 100% for as frequently and as long as possible.
so. If I just take your words, Memo, and rephrase them, so basically, fitness it's communication, decision making, execution of those decisions, and more frequently and for longer time. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
That's brilliant, and I think it's very important for all of us to know. And Memo, I think really uh, great. I think I hope that we elaborated on uh, different areas about the game, about the players' development. Think we elaborated a bit on all those components that define the football, which is the uh, uh, execution, which is the technique, and also decision making, the insight, game insight, and also the communication, which is the tactical component of the game, and also the fitness. I think we also elaborated on different age groups and how to be trained at each age group. And I hope all this insights it's going to be a value and a bonus and give an extra for for the coaches that listen to this podcast. Like we say at the end, uh, this is not opinions. I think Memo's explanation is not trying to give just his opinion, but he's also trying to put references, and everyone could take these references, reflect on them, and look for the truth. Because if, for example, in the philosophy, it's very common if we think back to the Greek ancients and those philosophers like Socrates, Plato. They were not looking for opinion, but they were mostly looking for the truth. Yeah, they don't always find the truth, but that was their main goal in their life. So, Mimo, I really thank you very much. I know we could have stayed here for over 24 hours talking about football. Uh,
Yeah.
I know all the information you have inside the brain, and I know all the knowledge that you accumulated through the time. But I think it's very good at this episode that we uh, frame it in this. Think this is good
Yeah.
enough.
That we pause here. Yeah.
Yeah, not too
Yeah.
much too soon, because it's important. But
Yeah.
looking forward, hopefully we can host you again in another episode and even elaborate. And there are various concepts topics that we want to discuss and insight the audience, and at the same time uh, learn from each other, because that's the main. I think knowledge is just communication. That's how I perceive it. It's like a two-way traffic. I'm giving you knowledge, but at the same time, I'm learning from you as well. And I think I mentioned
Yeah.
that at the beginning of the podcast when you were mentoring me in my level one course. This is the sentence that you always say to me, that I'm giving you knowledge, but at the same time, I'm also learning from that process as well. And I think this is brilliant. Memo, any final word?
Yeah, no, like you said, we've discussed a lot in the last hour or so, and it might be a lot for the listener. So you do might have to listen to it back again several times. But no, we could have gone even deeper because we just discussed at surface level uh, everything. Because we, like you said, we could have gone a lot deeper, and we could have talked for 24 hours today about the entire thing. But again, that would be a lot, and like you said, too much too soon. But the important thing is for coaches to take away is to always take the game as the starting point. Don't zoom in too quickly. Don't try to copy and paste what the pros are doing, because obviously those players are already developed, and you have to help your players have a strong foundation so then they can survive at a higher level environment. So you have to provide these players the tools, but always stay zoomed out and make sure your thinking, your rational thinking is of the highest level, taking the game as a starting point, all the components of the game, and making sure when you design training sessions that you give the best possible training situation to help the players uh, solve the problem that you see on the pitch. So your coaching ability to recreate the situation or to create certain situations, but don't zoom in too quickly, because maybe you might think it's executing problem, but maybe the player has a problem with uh, deciding what he should do or how he should do it, or maybe the players are having trouble communicating. So again, always stay zoomed out, evaluate from from a zoomed out lens, and then once you identify the problem, then you can start to zoom in, and that's when you design whatever training session you want based on the problem that you identify as a coach. But yeah, always take the game as a starting point, because the game is the same for everybody and is as objective as possible. And then based on your external factors that you have at home, then your art of coaching starts to become important, because we all have different personalities, we all have different ways of expressing things, but the game is the same for everybody, and we should always take that as the starting point with for our reasoning to do certain things as coaches.
Awesome, awesome. That's brilliant, Memo. Memo, gracias.
Of course, my
Thank
pleasure,
you
my
very
friend.
much. And our wonderful audience, this is the end of this podcast episode. Looking forward for more to come. We're really looking forward for your reflection, your feedback, and everything here we do at Beyond the Pitch podcast. It's uh, for you, our audience, for our players, for our families, also for our coaches to grow and evolve the game. This is Mo, and see you soon. Thank you.